Okay, so this is the Skidoo S chassis. It's obviously a little different than the Polaris. The biggest difference being the clutch tower. It sits over here and it angles down around the front of the tunnel here. You can see there's a piece there and there's a piece there. But other than that, I showed you the plate that's made up for there. I get you the measurements for that, and then the um, live axle bearing retainer gets welded on top of that. I'll give you the measurements for that in a few, but right now I'm looking at the motor mounts and how to mount the motor. So you can see right here, this is where the stock motor mount was. I have to drill it out and move it over to here. And then this one on this side as well has to be moved, and that one has to be moved. The one on the mag side on the the front doesn't have to be moved. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I did those. I'm going to show you this piece here is what was actually mounted up underneath there, and then it's riveted where those two holes are. See how they line up there? And that's what holds that, and that's where you tighten your motor mounts down on that. But we have to move those, so I'll give you the measurements on those. So I put the tape where I'm going to mark the holes. And the measurements, I butt the tape into the inside of the tunnel, and I measured over 3.5 on this side, and then 11.25. That's to the center of the new motor mount hole. And if you hold your tape right on the edge of this rounded corner, like halfway in between, it's 2 inches to the dot and 2 inches to the center on that. So again, it's 3.5, 11.25. And the reason I get the 3.5, it's the same as this one on the bottom that we're not moving. 3.5 to that, and then 11.25 to that one as well. So these are going to be parallel. These two pieces we're going to be putting here are going to be parallel. And then this one is the same as whatever this is. That's 2.25. So I just hook my tape on there and go 2.25. Now that I have my holes drilled for the nut, the way I'm going to mark the rivets is I'm going to put the bolt right through there. It comes out the other side. And then just put it right in the hole. And drill out the rivets. I've already pre-drilled them. I just put the tape there so you can see what's going on. That's how that's going to look. On this one here, you can actually stick your fingers up underneath the little hole they provide for you. Get a rivet in there. Got somebody around to help you, certainly be helpful. There you go, just like it came from the factory. And obviously, these ones are going to be a little trickier. I'm going to try and see if I can snake this down through. Put a little hook on it. It's going to take a few. So this is the motor mount that I have for this particular sled. It works. I didn't use the motor mounts on this one, but I haven't had any issues with it for 2 years. It's obviously a little more complicated. Kind of pieced it together as I was figuring things out, and if I tried to explain this to you, you'd end up with more questions than answers. So we're going to go with this one. So now we got the motor mounts in, all four. I'm not making this out of steel. I'm just going to mark it up out of wood so you can see how it all goes together, because I'm not actually going to make this motor mount now. I'm going to use the old one. But so for the new ones, you get 1/4-inch plate steel. It's 1.5 inches by 2 1/4. And to the center of the hole is 3/4 and 3/4. So I just put those on there. And you're going to want to make sure when you put these on that you bolt it down tight. You want everything to fit the way it's going to fit, because after these are in and you tighten all these down, you're going to take 1 inch by 1 inch, 1/8 inch wall, hollow steel. That's what I use for the other motor mount on the Polaris. So I just made it out of wood again. And that is 11 1/4 to the long point, and I just nipped a little 30-degree angle on there just to give it a little more clearance, because you want to have room for a washer in here and a bolt. So again, that's 11 1/4 with a 30-inch, 1 inch by 1 inch. And you're going to put those on there, and then once you have these bolted down, you're going to go ahead and get these parallel where you want them, and then tack weld them, pull them off, and then you're going to have to do some fancy welding in the backside, because they don't actually fit flush. It's at a bit of an angle. So if you tack that and tack that, pull it out, it shouldn't move on you too much. And then weld the bottom side. And that's going to sit right there. So once you get that all welded in, I'm going to take some basically 3/4 inch long piece of 1 inch by 1 inch steel, and that's going to get welded right on top. And this one's going to get welded down there. The placement of this one's not crucial. I guess I would just put it right at the short point on that miter. This one you want to have it, if you butt your tape to the drive shaft, you want it at 5.5. Because once you have those in there, and then you have this one at 5.5, this one down here, you're going to take 1/4 inch plate steel. It's going to be 8 3/4 by 10 inches. And when that goes on, that's going to be 5.5 inches. You're just going to flush that right up with your 1 inch pieces that you welded in at 5.5 off the drive shaft. And that's where the motor's going to sit. And that'll give you plenty of room to slide it around. The bolt holes are like here and here somewhere. I'll show you how to do that after. What I'm going to do is show you how to square up this plate to the secondary clutch over on the Polaris, because I have that all set up. And then I'll explain. Pretty much it's going to be the same process. All right, back on the Polaris now. I got my secondary clutch installed. I didn't mention what I use for the drive shaft is you can get on Amazon. It's a go-kart, 1 inch go-kart axle with a 1/4 inch keyway already in it. And then you just cut that to length and slide everything together. Put your bearings on, and then your bearing retainers, and they bolt right in there. We'll talk about lining it up side to side after we get the motor mounted. But for right now, we're just going to try to square up this surface here to this face here. So what I've done is I have a piece of plywood. Make sure it's plywood or MDF or something that's straight. You don't want anything that's crooked, warped, twisted. You want to make sure it's good and flat. So this is about 18 inches long, and it's 10.5 wide. And then the cut that I made in it is 5.5 on the inside, and then it's 7 3/4, call it 8 inches right there. And the reason I do that is so I can get around all this. And then this gets mounted right on there. I'm going to take a couple spring clamps. Make sure that's clamped on there nice and even, like make sure you're touching the sheaths in two places there, and then two places on the bottom as well. That way you got a nice flat plane that's on the same face as the clutch. Then you're going to take your plate, and the plate goes 9 inches this way and 12 inches that way, and that give you plenty to slide the motor around on. I'm either going to flush it up to this side or flush it up to this side, depending on which side needs to be welded first. So the way I'm going to determine that, I'm going to take my framing square, and I'm just going to hold it tight on the plate and slide it over till it hits the board. And then I'm going to look at that. So what has to happen to make this square is this side, the PTO side, has to come up. It's a little exaggeration, but it has to. It's sitting like that now. It has to come up just a little bit. So what I'm going to do, now that I know this side has to come up, I'm going to slide this right over to the edge here and flush it up. I'm going to hold it at 1.25 inches off the face of the front. And that's off the inside edge. And you want to make sure that your steering rod goes freely and it doesn't make connection with the plate. That's real close. I think I ended up putting a notch in here with the other motor. So we'll find out about that. So once you get this in about 1.25 inches away from the inside wall, flush it up to this side because we know this side has to come up to square it to this face. So when I get that where I want it at 1.25 inches flushed up here, we go over to the welder and throw a tack in here and then a tack in there. So I got a good tack here and a good tack here that's not going to break. I'm going to check it again. It's actually sitting high right now because when I welded this, it actually pulled up this side. So it's actually too high now. So what I'll do, I cut these little wedges out of pine. They work good for shims. So I'm going to pull this back down a little bit. So I'm just going to put the clamp on it. Just barely put pressure on it. Okay, so I'm pushing down on it. That's pretty good there. So I'm going to take these little wedges I have and stick them between the 1-inch motor mount frame underneath and the plate steel to hold it up where it needs to be. Check it again. It's got to come up a little bit more, so I'm pushing it in a little bit tighter. Loosen that up a little bit. Got that, so now I'm going to go back and put 2 tacks on this side. I'm going to have to get it underneath because the plate's overhanging just a little bit. So I got a few tacks underneath. Now I can pull out my wooden shims. Just double check. Make sure, and that's good there. Nice and square. Nice and square there. We shouldn't have any belt issues now. So next thing, I'm gonna pull this off and finish weld underneath. Just be careful when you pull it off. Make sure when you put your tacks in, you have enough of a weld to hold the whole thing together while you pull it apart, because you don't want it moving on you. So you pull these 4 bolts, those 4 bolts, pull it out, flip it over, and weld it up. This actually does hit here. So all I'm going to do, make a little notch here. And actually, I think that's right where the motor is going to sit anyway. There's a natural notch in the base of the motor, so we'll cut that right out. So I pulled the clutch because I have to put the belt on in order to line up the motor, but this is what the assembly looks like. It's just a 1-inch shaft, the retainer, and then the bearing. And then another retainer goes on this side, and kind of like that. So it's a little tricky getting this back in. You kind of angle it and finagle it, drop it in. We'll go ahead and put the other retainer on it, put the 3 bolts back in, the 3 bolts on this side. All right, got the clutch in, got the belt on. I'm going to take the motor and place it right on there, right on that plate. And it comes almost to the edge of this plate here. So that little notch is going to be, I don't know if you can see it. That little notch is going to be right here. There's also a little notch on the base of the motor. That's where that's going to sit. But what you want to try and make sure at this point that the motor is one way or another close enough to where it needs to be. If you can see the belt, straight on. This belt is actually too long. This is the belt for the skidoo, which the center on the skidoo is 1 inch longer. It's 16 5/8 from the center of this drive shaft to the center of the clutch. On the Polaris, with the belt number that I gave you, it's going to be 15 5/8 from the center of this to the center of the clutch. So I'll put my tape there. I'll come back a little bit. Back that way a little bit. On that 15 5/8 there, so I'm just going to put a mark on the steel plate. You can see that. Just going to put a mark right there on the steel plate. That's where the front of the motor is going to be. Once I have that, I'm going to check this again. 15 and 5/8. Okay, so everything's going to pretty much anchor off of that corner that we just marked. Because now what I got to do is I got to make sure that the clutches are parallel. So what I'm going to do is make sure your clutch, your secondary, is kind of halfway in between both towers. That way it gives you room to shim one way or another. And this one here actually has like a 3/8 spacer in the backside, so the clutch can still go that way. So you have room to go this way and that way, left and right with that clutch, and you have room to go left and right with this clutch. So that should give you plenty, as long as you're in the middle of that, these two towers. And then I take a straight edge and give it a quick eyeball, make sure it's nice and straight. Hold it up on that face. Pull your secondary over to where you can see, look down and see the clutch down on the bottom. And you can actually just eyeball it real careful, and you can see if it's got to go this way or that way, and it does have to go this way, just a scooch. It actually looks pretty good right there. And you just want to make sure these two are on the same plane. So I have it where I want it. I'm going to go ahead and mark the corners. I'm going to actually mark the base on all four corners. And I just moved it. Be careful when you're doing this not to move it. Looks good. You will have some wiggle room too. Once you bolt the motor down, you'll be able to kind of tweak it a little bit. But you want to obviously get it as close as possible. I'm going to mark this corner. That corner. Right. So that's all set. So we've lined it up this way, this way. So I just want to check it one more time on the center to center, make sure it's still at 15 and 5/8 for the Polaris. Yep. 16 and 5/8 for the Skidoo. So this is where it's a little tricky. So if you hold your tape on that, you can see that from the outside of this edge, the center of that hole is like a 1/2 inch. So it would be a 1/2 inch in from that edge, 1/2 inch in from that edge. And the same thing with this one from this edge. But then you also have, this is an elongated hole. So from this little corner here, I'm going right to the center of that. It's 1 3/8. And then this one, as I said, was a 1/2 inch all the way around. So you remember that motor's going to get turned around. And so that's going to be the back. So you can see where my marks are for where I marked it. And the inside edge of this is the actual motor. So I said 1 3/8 over, which is there. And then I'm going to come in a 1/2 inch. So right there. And then this one is just a 1/2 inch all the way around. So I'm going to mark it at a 1/2 inch. From there, 1/2 inch from there. That's that one. And then the front, it's the same. It's 1 3/8, except it's opposite now because this corner matches this corner. So it's 1 3/8 by a 1/2 inch. And then this one's just a 1/2 inch all the way around. 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch. All right, so those are going to be the mounting holes. And for those, I just use 3/8 bolts. I'm going to drill the hole out a little bit, maybe 7/16 with a washer on the bottom, and that gives you a little play to move around and get the motor fine-tuned once you do get it mounted in. So everything is out of the way. You're going through here, nothing's in the way underneath, nothing's in the way underneath here as well. So if you stay with the measurements I gave you, everything should fit. This little piece that I welded in here, that we welded across underneath this plate, is back about here, so that's not going to interfere. The only thing we're going to have to do, like I said, is make a notch. Actually, let's put the motor there. So we're just going to notch this out right here, and then that'll clear that. It's just barely hitting when it goes all the way down. It's actually hitting this bolt here. So once we cut that out, I'll just cut it out to here. I'll take this whole section out. That's that. So again, measurements on your plate. The tape measure around here somewhere. You can see this. It's 1 1/4 inch from the inside of there to the front of that plate. And then it's just flush on this side. Again, this can go either way when you weld it in, depending on what side has to come up. And then, again, it's 9 inches that way and 12 inches that way. So I think that's about it for that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. So as far as putting spacers in here, between the clutch tower and the clutch itself, we'll fine tune that after we get the motor mounted. So at this time, I'm going to pull everything up, pull that motor mount off the plate, weld it underneath, drill it all out, paint it all up, bolt it back in, and that's not going to come out again. And I should be able to put the motor on after and line it up with the clutches. So after this one here, I'm going to go ahead and do a short video on the clutch tower for the Skidoo. As soon as that my mock-up wood pieces, the glue on that stuff sets up. All right, here we are back on the Skidoo. I just want to point out one thing. This steering rod here was actually mounted on top of this bracket here. So this bolt was underneath. What I did is I just flipped it around, and that gave me more clearance for the plate for the motor mount. So these are the motor mounts all made up. We did that already. I have the 3/4 inch, 1 inch steel welded on top. And that's it's going to be 5.5 off the jack shaft. And then it's just going to be flush on this side and flush on that side as well. And you probably noticed I don't have the motor mounts in here. This is just sitting on the frame, but these are going to come off. These are all going to be steel, but these are going to come off. The motor mount's going to go down, and then these are going to sit right on top of it. And then your plate steel is going to go up there. Again, 5.5 off the jack shaft, and then flush that up on both sides. And then as far as the clutch, the secondary clutch goes, see if I get this all in one shot. So you're going to mount your clutch on your shaft, and once you get your clutch in there, you're going to take that piece of wood that I had made up for a jig. You're going to clamp that to the side of the clutch, same as the Polaris, and then you're going to make sure that this and the face of that jig, you go grab it. Again, you're going to mount this right to the side of the clutch, and then you're going to make sure this is at a 90 here. And again, if this side needs to come up to make that work, then you need to tack this side and shim that side up. If it's vice versa, then you tack that side, you shim that side up. And the other thing is the clutch tower itself. Again, it's the same process as the Polaris in the last video. The only thing different is the measurement between the clutch towers. This one's 6.5. I think on the Polaris it was, I don't know, 5.5 or something. But so you're going to cut your 2x8 blocks at 6.5, and you're going to clamp those. You're going to clamp one right in here, and then you're going to clamp one in the back. And then once you do that, that whole assembly is going to sit right on here, and you're going to tack it in. But you're going to be 3/4 inch from the inside of this tunnel to the front face of that first tower. And then as long as you have your 6.5 inches there, that'll put you where you need to be to make everything work. And then the motor alignment, same thing. You're going to have this on with the belt. Put your motor on. You're going to, the center on this one, from the center of this drive shaft to where the center of the clutch is, it's going to be 16 5/8. So once you have that down, again, it's the same exact process as the Polaris. So that's about it for this video. I'll catch you on the next one.